Right, shalom, shalom. I'm gonna start off this video by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and the bishops, a great millstone that rule well, that teach well, while learning truth 100% according to the Bible. And I also want to say shalom to the elect, the 144,000 men, the prophets, the servants scattered abroad the four corners of the earth. And shalom to the Akwaf, which are you sisters that are sincere, and your children. Shalom. And in today's video is going to be another update on World War III, the news that is taking place around the world involving the Third World War, which we know will take place, which is biblical prophecy. And, you know, these are just the signs and the things that are happening in the world that's leading up to ultimately this escalation in this Third World War, which we know will result in the destruction of America, Babylon the Great, right? So this is an update, and I'm going to read the title of the video. It said, Red Alert. You know, Amalek, which are those little hats over there in the land of Israel, intensifies preps to strike Iran. U.S. nuclear forces, Salakia, on high alert, you know. So like I said, this is going to be a video, you know, just touching in on things that are happening around the world as far as with the World War, and Lord's will, I can get a few precepts and it can be edifying to you brothers and sisters that may come across it. But with that being said, we're going to start the video and get into it, what he's basically saying, you know. And before I start this video, I want to say fair use under the 1976 Copyright Act. I'm not getting paid for this video. This is only for educational purposes only. So with that being said, fair use.
Okay, I have not seen this in a very, very long time. Typically, these combat scents will fly out into the Sea of Japan when North Korea does some kind of a missile test. But this one is flying along the border with North Korea, so something must be going on here along the DMZ. North Korea must be massing forces along the border of South Korea.
Growing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. That's why there's Betterment. The automated
massing forces.
Salakia.
Along the border of South Korea. Okay, keep in mind, this is a high-priority reconnaissance plane that sends intelligence information directly to Trump and Hegseth and all the top generals. Now, in addition to that, right now, we also have a B-52 nuclear bomber airborne over Texas, which is extremely unusual for this late at night. It took off from Barksdale Air Force Base a couple of hours ago, and it went all the way to New Mexico, and it's now flying back. We also have a strategic reconnaissance plane that took off from Offutt Air Base, and then it went down to Oklahoma, and it did this north to south pattern here, looking towards the east and west coast, because these planes have side-looking radars. Now, in addition to this, earlier this evening, we had another B-52 nuclear bomber airborne over Arkansas and Louisiana. We had a Cobra Ball, which is a special plane used to detect and track missiles, and it was looping over North Dakota. We had a B-1 strategic bomber flying over North Dakota. We had two reconnaissance planes, RC-135s, flying over Nebraska and South Dakota, looking to the east and west and the north and the south. And we also had a Combat Sentinel, a high-priority recon plane, flying through the Midwest. So something is brewing, guys, with all these EAMs as well, all right?
And we know ultimately all of these things are leading up to the Third World War, you know, and I'm going to get a few precepts real quick, all right? But we know that that valley of Jehoshaphat, with what the Lord talks about in the book of Joel, chapter 3, that's where all of these fighter jets and these planes, these aircraft carriers, all of these things are being transported to the so-called Middle East, because ultimately that's where the Lord is about to allow this Third World War to take place at. So I'm going to read this in the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 9. And it said, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, meaning these heathen nations, right? Prepare war. And that's what they're doing. They're preparing war. They're getting everything ready. They're testing missiles. They're testing rockets. You know, they're testing their aircraft carriers. You know, they're launching new submarines. They're arming themselves and creating new technology, AI and things of that nature to be used for warfare. You know, so these nations, these heathen nations are getting ready, man, because they know that this third world war is about to pop off. It actually have already started. It's just not reached the point yet to where the nukes are going to be shot off. And we know that won't take place till ultimately the MOTB and everything else is implemented. Jacob's trouble and things of that nature takes place. Then that will happen, right? It says, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. And that's these nations, you know, like North Korea, Iran, all of these nations at one point in time were weak. You know, they didn't have the technologies and the capabilities in which it is that they have now, you know, being able to, you know, build nuclear bombs and things of this nature. They have the technology now, right? Due to Russia, which is the guard of these nations that it tells you about in Ezekiel 38. So Iran and all of these different places have the technology now. So now they can boast their military might and flex their muscles and basically, you know, tell the whore, which is America, Babylon the Great, that they're not scared anymore. They're not in fear because they have the same technology that these Edomites have, you know, which is having the capability to, you know, launch nuclear missiles, you know. And I'm going to read that again. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak, right, say I am strong. Verse 11, assemble yourselves. The word assemble means get ready. And that's what these nations are doing. They're getting ready. They're arming themselves. They're getting their troops ready. They're getting their aircraft carriers ready, like I said before. You know, they're getting everything ready, man. They're making sure their nuclear missiles are able to launch. You know, they're doing research on them and, you know, constantly working on them and observing them because they know that these things are soon about to be used, right? And it says, and come all ye heathen and gather yourselves together round about thither. Cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Verse 12, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? Which is going to be held over there in what they call the Middle East. Right? And that word Jehoshaphat in the Hebrew means Yahweh Shaphat, which is the Heavenly Father's judgment. He's going to judge all of these heathen nations for what they have done unto the Lord's people, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which makes up the biblical Hebrew Israelites. And it says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So that's why these people are ultimately getting ready. That's why all of these things are happening, because the Lord is preparing these nations, right, for this ultimately, this war of Armageddon that's about to happen soon. Right? This is Revelation chapter 11, verse 14 in the KJV. And it said the second woe is past, representing World War II. We know that have already taken place, you know, between 1939 and 1945, I should say. And behold, the third woe, meaning the third world's war, cometh quickly, right? And we could tell that it's coming. We could see it ramping up. We're seeing everything happen, man, proving that, you know, we're getting close to that time, you know. And this is Matthew chapter 24. And I'm going to read verse 6. And it says, I'm going to read it in a KJV. And it said, and ye shall have wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet, right? We know ultimately, because guess what? Though these things are happening, we know that the end is not yet, because like I said before, Jacob's trouble still needs to take place, and the implementation of the MOTB ultimately before this place, America, Babylon the Great, can be destroyed and turned into nuclear ash. You know, ultimately these other prophecies need to fulfill the famine of the word and etc. But we can see that all of these things are already coming to pass, that they're fulfilling quickly, you know. And this is Matthew 24:6 in the NLT. And it said, and you will hear of wars and threats of wars, right? And that's what we're hearing happening from all of these different nations. The land of over there in the Middle East, the Amaleks, right? Which is the so-called little hats, you know, they're basically threatening Iran, telling them that they're going to destroy their nuclear facilities and all of these different things. All of that are what you would consider threats of wars, right? But don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately, of course, right? Because like I said, many more things, not many more, but, you know, a few prominent prophecies have to take place. Like I said, Jacob's trouble that it talks about in Jeremiah 30:7 and Revelation 13:16 and 17, meaning that RFID C hip. Once those things, once we see that C hip on the scene, then we know that nuclear destruction is close, right? So, you know, I'm going to get this precept. because those thermonuclear missiles will be used for the Lord's indignation, which is his righteous anger to pour out upon this place, America, Babylon the Great. So we know ultimately this third world war will take place, right? This is Isaiah chapter 54, verse 16. And it said, behold, I, meaning Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jesus Christ, right, have created the smith, meaning the modern day sciences, right, that blow off the coals in the fire, meaning, having the capabilities to split the atom in half in order to come up with nuclear fission and things of that nature to create this ICBM missile, right? It said, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. Whose work? Yahweh Bashem Yahushai's work, the Heavenly Father and his Son. And I have created the waster, meaning that ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, to destroy. And that's what it's going to do. In this third world war, man, it's going to destroy this place, America, in 1 hour, as it tells you in Revelation 18, right? So, yeah, we're going to watch just a little bit more of this video just to see what he's talking about. But, yeah, this third world war is going to happen, man. I mean, it's inevitable. It's prophecy. It's going to fulfill,
As well, all right? And last night, we had 2 E-3 Sentry AWACS planes fly from Oklahoma to the Rota Air Base in Spain. Now, the reason why this is significant is because the Rota Air Base is one of the U.S. bomber bases overseas. Okay, so you have Rota in Europe, you have Mildenhall in the UK, you have Diego Garcia, which everybody knows of now. There's Ascension Island. There's a couple of other ones. There's some in Poland and other countries. Up in Sweden, they have one near Luleå. And in Poland, they have Powice Air Base. But Rota is one of the premier U.S. bomber bases in Spain, okay? And they moved 2 E-3 Sentry AWACS planes to Spain, to Rota Air Base.
Right. And that made me think of this precept right here. I'm going to get this, right? I'm going to go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, because we see that everybody's in a peaceful spirit right now. You got people thinking, we're in that peace and security phase right now. And we can clearly see that because a lot of these people, they're thinking America is going to get back greater. Trump then took some of these tariffs off of these different nations and things of that nature. So certain people is, feeling like as though nothing is going to happen bad. So everybody is in a peaceful state right now. The so-called pagan holiday Easter was just yesterday. So a lot of these people are in a peaceful state, man, and thinking everything is good. But we know what the Lord said when everybody think that there's going to be peace or when things are peaceful, right? This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 1. And it said, but of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. Verse 2, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord, Yahweh Shah HaMashiach, so cometh as a thief in the night. Verse 3, for when they, right, meaning these heathen nations, these Edomites and all of these other devils, when they shall say peace and safety, which that's what they're talking about. You got a lot of peace deals supposedly happening in Ukraine, happening in all of these other places around the world. Trump telling the American people to hang in there, that the stock market crashing is not going to affect the world and things of that nature, that America is going to be great again. So, I mean, we're in that phase of when they're talking about peace, right? It says, and I'm going to read it from the top, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. And that word suddenly means something that you're not expecting to happen is going to come out of nowhere. Just like the Lord said in verse 2, like the Lord's going to come as a thief in the night. That's the same way this destruction is going to happen. People is not going to be expecting it to come, So, yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say with today's video. It was just a quick hit. Telling you brothers and sisters of things that are happening. But yeah, you got to constantly be watching as well as praying, because we're in those times where anything is bound to happen, so you just got to keep trusting in Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, keeping the faith, and, Lord's will, we be the elect, that we be delivered from all these things. But, with that being said, to the next time, I'm going to say shalom to the elect.